Welcome to section 2.4, vertical angles and linear pairs. So, two angles are vertical angles if they are not adjacent, so that means not next to, and their sides are formed by two intersecting lines. So these have to be lines, and then they're the non-adjacent angles. So for example, angle 1 and angle 3 are vertical angles, angle 2 and angle 4 are vertical angles. So here we have angle 2 and angle 5 are vertical angles. They're formed by these two intersecting lines here. And then we have angle 3 and angle 6 are vertical angles, and they are formed by these two intersecting lines. And then we have angle 1 and angle 4, and they are formed by these two intersecting lines. So you can see angle 2 and angle 5, angle 1 and angle 4 vertical angles, angle 6 and angle 3. Now, we know that vertical angles are congruent. Their measures are the same. So angle 2 and angle 4 have the same measure, and angle 1 and angle 3 have the same measure. So for example, the measure of angle CED, so that's this angle, well, if this angle AEB is 50 degrees, that means that the measure of angle CED is 50 degrees. Okay, because these are vertical angles, and here's the two intersecting lines that form the vertical angles. Linear pairs are two angles that have two angles are linear pairs if their non-common sides are on the same line. Basically, a linear pair are two angles that form a line. So here's the line, and then they share this common side. So they are adjacent because they're right next to each other, and they have that common side there. And we know that linear pairs add up to 180 degrees because they make a straight line, and there's 180 degrees in a straight line. So if two angles form a linear pair, then they are considered supplementary angles, which means they add up to 180 degrees. So we know that the measure of angle 1 plus the measure of angle 2 equals 180 degrees. So find the measure of angle RSU. So we know the measure of angle RSU plus 62 degrees equals 180 degrees. This is a straight line, so we know these two angles add up to 180. So if we subtract 62 degrees from both sides, we get that the measure of angle RSU is 118 degrees. Find the measure of angle 1. So again, these two angles form a linear pair, right? They form a line, which means that they add up to 180 degrees. So we're going to subtract 19 from both sides, and we get that the measure of angle 1 equals 161 degrees. So determine whether the angles are vertical angles, a linear pair, or neither. Well, angle 1 and angle 2 form a straight line here, so they form a linear pair. They're adjacent as well. They're right next to each other, and they share this common side right here. Angle 3 and angle 4, you might think they're vertical angles because they're across from each other, but they're not. Okay, first, they don't look congruent, and second, they're not formed by two intersecting lines because this is not a line. So angle 3 and angle 4 are neither. Angle 5 and angle 6, now these two angles are formed by two intersecting lines. So this is where we have vertical angles. So, for example, if this angle is 50 degrees, then we know that angle 2 is 50 degrees because they are vertical angles, which means that they are congruent. Okay. Now, we have to look Angle 1 and angle 2 form a linear pair because they form a straight line. So we know that they add up to 180 degrees. So if I take 180 degrees and subtract out that 50 degrees of angle 2, we're left with 130 degrees for the measure of angle 1. Now angle 1 and angle 3 are formed by two intersecting lines, which means that they are vertical angles and they are congruent to each other. So angle 3 also has to be 130 degrees. So same thing here. If this angle is 124 degrees, then we know that angle 2 also has to be 124 degrees because they are vertical angles formed by two intersecting lines. And then if we look at angle 2 and angle 3, we know that these two angles add up to 180 degrees. So if we do 180 minus 124, we get 156 degrees. And then angle 1 and angle 3 are vertical angles, which means that they are congruent. So angle 1 is 156 degrees. Last one. Angle 2 is 35 degrees because these are vertical angles across from each other formed by two intersecting lines. So we know that they're congruent. And then we know that angle 1 and angle 2 form a straight line, so we know that these two add up to 180 degrees. So 180 degrees minus 35 degrees is 145 degrees, and if angle 1 is 145 degrees, so is the measure of angle 3 because they are vertical angles directly across from each other.